Hi, John Mann from MannMade USA. Today we're going to do an installation video on installing a new trem block on this SE Silver Sky guitar. So we're going to replace this piece here. It's a MannMade USA block. We've chose to go with the brass option. You could get a steel version or a brass version. The brass version will have a warmer tone, more mid-range, and a better sustain. So before we get started, let's run down the tools that we're going to use to do this. Some of these tools will be used in the video, others are not, but it's generally this assortment of tools that you need to do any work on your guitar. Let's start over here, and we have a set of digital calipers, a 6-inch scale, feeler gauges, a string height gauge, radius gauges. Then we're going to go to Allen wrenches. We've got a metric set and a US set. And I have this cool little kit called a Chapman set, which is a ratchet version. These are handy. These are hex drivers in a screwdriver fashion. We sell these online. They're made by Bondus. Cool little tool, very handy to have. And then over here we've got an assortment of screwdrivers. We've got a #1 long screwdriver for adjusting your intonation on your guitar, a #2 Phillips, a #1 Phillips, a #0 Phillips. We're going to use a flathead 0. These two bits have hardened tips, so they're nice. We have several needle nose pliers and a set of wire cutters. On this side, we have a Peterson digital tuner, which is awesome to use. It's far more accurate than a clip-on tuner, but if that's what you got, you can use that as well. You'll get good results. A battery-operated screw gun, some strings, a string winder. This one we sell, this is made by Music Nomad. I really like it because it's soft rubber and it won't mar the finish on your guitar, and a string stretcher. And of course, we have a mat and a soft blanket to put your guitar on. This one happens to be a piece of an old bedspread, which is nice flannel. It's nice, soft, and scratch-free. And then, of course, your neck cradle. And of course, you need a good, solid, flat workbench to do this all on. Now we're going to start by taking the strings off. Now, as you can see, this guitar already has a set of our MannMade USA locking tuners installed. So it's easy to take the strings off of this guitar because you just unwind a turn or two, loosen the thumb screw, and your strings are off. All right, it's easier on an SE of any kind when you take the strings out when you're doing work like this to remove the backplate. So we're going to do this with our drill gun with a #1 Phillips bit. Notice my fingers around the screw in the head of the driver, the bit. This way, if it slips, I've got control of it. All right. Put that down, take our backplate, put it over there. Oh, this guitar is interesting. This customer has a Velcro tie around his springs. I guess he didn't like the natural reverberation you get from Trem Springs. Now on SE guitars, I find that a lot of times the ball line gets stuck in the block, which is another good reason to replace the trem block just from the frustration level. Take a #50 Bondus wrench, and you just poke it into the hole, and you'll knock the ball end loose, and you won't be so frustrated. So we're going to pull all these out, just like that. Done. First thing to do is take your saddles off. For this long #1 Phillips is nice because it's way over the body. And I can just unscrew it. I'm going to lay the saddles out in the order that I took them off. This way, when you go to reinstall them, you don't have to readjust the heights if they were set properly, but we'll double check that. The D string and the high E string have a longer spring, as you will see here if I line them all up, and that's because of the way the guitar intonates. So you got 2 long springs and 4 short springs. And the screws in this guitar are all the same length. Now that we've got the saddles off, we want to flip the guitar over flat on your workbench, and we want to undo the springs. So to do that, I'm going to use a number 2 Phillips and loosen the claw so there's less tension on the springs. That's probably enough. Let's try it. Yeah, not bad. All right. There we go. We got his little Velcro gizmo out. I'm going to put that over here on the side. Now, because we're going to replace the block, I am not going to bother with taking the springs off of it, because if I take the springs off, we're going to damage them. And you'll see that in another video that we have that shows you how to do that. So we're just going to leave those attached right onto the block. Now we're not going to fool with the front screws of this. We are just going to unscrew the block from the bridge. For that, you need metric wrenches. And that is a 3mm Allen wrench. I'm going to just loosen all 3, and then I'm going to remove them. Put those screws on the side. Now if you pick the guitar up, this should come right out. You have to pull it. In this case, the bushing came out. That's unusual. So how am I going to get rid of that? I'm going to loosen the set screw back here, and it should fall right out. Yep, came right out. A lot of times these are pressed in, but this one apparently is a little loose. So I'm just going to push it back in by hand so it's all there. I'm going to put the 3 mounting screws back on it so we don't lose them. And that's all there is to removing a trem block. Notice we've done it this way rather than take the bridge off. From my way of thinking, if this bridge is set properly, which it was, this is a very touchy adjustment, these 2 screws. Don't need to mess with it. I recommend you don't mess with it. It'll make your life simpler, make your guitar play better. These mounting screws are American threads, so they're not interchangeable with the screws that come with your SE guitar. Okay, so you got your new block. What's inside this little package? Aha. New Tremolo springs. And a wrench to take the old block off. This wrench fits this block. See? It's as simple as flipping your guitar over, putting it right in. When you flip it over, hold the block with your hand so it doesn't fall out, and then hand tighten a screw. I tend to use the center one. You can see what I'm doing here. Okay, voila, the other screws line up perfectly. I just hand tighten them at this point, and then once I've got all 3 seated, tighten it up. Make it good and tight, but not crazy. Don't strip out the heads of the screw, okay? We include a new set of Trem Springs with each block or bridge that we sell you. Notice the kink in it right here. Hopefully you could see that. That's to keep the spring inside the block without creeping up. A standard Fender spring just has an angle to it like that. They creep out. So this was Paul Smith's idea. Put a kink in it so they don't rise up. If you need to take your Trem Springs out, watch our other video that shows you how to do it without breaking the tang off. Otherwise, you've got a damaged block that you'll never get that piece of metal out. We like to put springs parallel to the neck and the strings. To me, engineering-wise, that makes the most sense. So we're going to put this in the hole, and you could do it to all of them if you want now at this point. One way of doing it, or one at a time. So we go 2 each side and leave the center one open. And by the way, you can use 2 springs, 3 springs, 4 springs, 5 springs. That's just a personal preference. 4 seems to be the magic number because the springs are under tension, so that means they're going to be working the best with your guitar. So now we're going to take our steel punch and we're going to just tap it down. Now I got to stop and remind you that this guitar needs to be sitting flat on the table, not on your neck cradle, flat on the table, so that the bridge has some support under it when we do this. So we're going to do that and just tap it down. It's not that hard. It's not like you're building a house. By the way, if you don't have a brass hammer, a steel hammer works just as well. Okay, now that we have our Trem Springs firmly seated in the block, it's time to hook it up to the claw. I've got the tension on the claw loosened. I use this #1 straight screwdriver, and I just go like that. I get the screwdriver in the loop, and if you like, you can do the outside ends. That kind of makes it easier to do the others. You got to pull them kind of in the middle. So you get them there, okay? And that's how you do it. All right, so we're going to tighten our claw up. A couple turns each side, going back and forth to keep the pressure equal. All right, now that we have where I think is enough tension, we're going to install a guitar pick under the bridge, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. And that'll help you set the tension on this. Prior to tightening up the spring, we're going to put this is a thin guitar pick, which is 1/2 millimeter, 0.5. We're going to put it underneath there. See if I can just tip that up enough, just for it to catch under there. Now that we've placed the guitar pick underneath the tail end of the bridge, we're going to tighten the claw up enough to make sure it just stays in place. That's all we want it to do. And as we put strings on, we may have to come back here and readdress that. So it's parallel to the cavity. Doesn't have to be perfect at this point. Now we go back to our cradle and put our saddles on. Here we are installing the original saddles that came with your guitar back on. In case you didn't realize it, MannMade makes replacement saddles, which because they're made of brass, offer more mid-range and sustain. B, because it has a nicely machined string slot, you will hardly ever break strings. So because we took the saddles off in order, we're going to replace them in order. This way, you shouldn't have to do much adjusting on your height, your radius. It's if you do, it is set to 8.5 inches, which is what the neck radius is for an SE Silver Sky. you'll see that I'm installing the saddles in a, just visually at this point, in a stair-step fashion. The high E and the D strings are set further, the furthermost forward towards the nut of your guitar. Conversely, the G string and the low E string are closest to the back, or the most furthest away from your nut. But you have to adjust that with a tuner when you properly set your intonation. But we're just kind of getting it eyeballed in. Okay, now that we're rough adjusted, the next step is to put your strings on and intonate your saddles, and then to double check the string radius. All right, next step is to set our string heights. We do this by setting your low E and your high E first, because at that point you're going to use those to set your radius. The low E should be at like 93 thousandths. The high E should be at 60. So this is why I didn't tighten the strings up to full tension. So it's easier to adjust this. When you adjust your saddles, you want the bottom of the saddle to be parallel with the bridge plate. You do not set your saddles at an angle. That's not the correct way to set radius. Think about it. This point, the center string where the slot is the only place in the radius that matters. Setting your saddles at angles will cause them to slide and shift, and your intonation and your setup will never be accurate. Okay, so we're still low, so I'm going to crank it up a little more. A 440 screw is a 40 pitch screw, and that means each full revolution is 50 thousandths of an inch. So it's a good way to adjust it. I think we're good there. And then over here, we're clearly low. And we're doing this measurement at the 12th fret. And right now we're at 40, so we need 20 thousandths. So maybe half a revolution. So you can look at this gauge and see the writing on it and go half a turn and then match the other side. And that should be 50. Very close. Quarter of a turn more maybe. All right, there we are. Now what we're going to do is grab our radius gauge, and we typically use these factory-made radius gauges from Stuart McDonald. Has 7 1/4, 9 1/2, 10, and 12. We don't have an 8 1/2, which is what a silver sky is. So how do we do that? Get yourself a piece of cardstock, 8 1/2. 8 1/2 is the radius. So diameter is 2 times radius. So 16 plus half, 17-inch diameter. Get yourself a compass, like from school days, and draw yourself a full circle, and then cut a little piece to match. That's all you need. If it only lasts the one time, well, you can do it again. I like to do this with the guitar on my shoulder, looking down at the saddles and adjusting the radius like that. And then all we're going to do is bring up each saddle to match. And like I said, keep the saddle parallel to the bottom of the bridge. String stretched. What's left to do now is adjust the claw and intonate. I'm going to do the claw first. You've got to tune your guitar up for this. All right. Back to here. Now we're going to loosen the screw like a quarter of a turn each side. And what you're looking for is you want to hear that guitar pick fall down on top of the backplate. And then your claw will be properly set. Come on. There it is. I heard it drop. Okay, and now, because we used a really thin pick, the bridge is set up properly. It should be, because we did not touch this, just slightly above here and just touching the body there. And that's how that's done. So we'll go back and check our tuning. Tune your guitar up to pitch. Play at the 12th fret. If it's sharp, you move the saddle towards the neck. If it's flat, you move it the other way. That one's a little sharp. So move the saddle back. No more. That's good. This one is flat, so we're going to move that saddle forward. That's the B string. There we go. And just double check your action. If you like what you saw here today, please subscribe, like, and ring the bell, and stay current on all the new updates we have for PRS, Fender, and Gibson guitars, among others. Thanks for watching. John Mann.